Hello everyone, welcome to the series summarizing the novel Lord of the Mysteries on the AniMonolith channel. In previous parts, Klein at Backlund meets the Nighthawks in another area and they bring the sealed artifact 2-049, an ominous, living artifact with a dangerous ability to paralyze nearby individuals. Introduced to the visiting Nighthawks, Larada, a Sequence 8 gravedigger, Ire Harson, and Borja, Klein witnesses the artifact's erratic behavior as it targets those closest to it. The group transports 2-049, contained in a black iron chest, to Ray Bieber's home to confirm his connection to the Antigonus family. Upon arrival, the artifact becomes highly agitated, affecting multiple people simultaneously, which Harson explains is a sign of its reaction to the scent of Antigonus descendants. Despite its volatility, the artifact is used to track traces of Ray Bieber. Inside the chest, the artifact is revealed to be a grotesque, animated puppet with a disturbing clown-like face, signaling further danger and mystery surrounding its nature and purpose. Staring into the puppet's pupilless black eyes, Klein felt an unprecedented chill and a paralyzing fear wash over him. His thoughts slowed, and he instinctively wanted to call for help, but his throat was blocked, rendering him mute. Dunn noticed Klein's rigid movements and pushed him hard, snapping him out of the trance. Larada laughed lightly, saying, "It seems to like Klein," though she reassured him that it was a relatively less dangerous sealed artifact among the level 2 artifacts. As the puppet staggered toward the left with stiff, mechanical movements, Klein speculated that 2-049 might assimilate the beings it controls, meaning that had Dunn not awakened him, Klein might have become a human-like puppet himself. Harson, who had been freed from the artifact's influence, ordered Leonard to follow the direction the puppet was pointing. Throughout the journey, the puppet repeatedly adjusted its path, stubbornly acting as a compass for the Antigonus family. Klein found it amusing that the artifact, created by the Antigonus family, was now inadvertently leading them to its maker's demise. As they neared their destination at the docks, the puppet directed them toward a gray warehouse. Harson carefully placed the puppet back into the iron chest, sealing it after a struggle with Borja and Larada's help. Klein and the Nighthawks followed the puppet's lead, cautiously performing the hand-bending gesture they'd devised to prevent paralysis. The closer they got to the warehouse, the more Klein's anxiety grew. No one knew what kind of transformation Ray Bieber might have undergone due to the Antigonus family journal he had. Before entering, Dunn calmly asked Klein to divine whether there was any danger inside. Klein, nodding, performed the divination with his yellow quartz pendulum, carefully repeating his question, "Is there danger inside?" After several repetitions, the pendulum began spinning clockwise, faster and faster, indicating a strong affirmation. Klein reported that great danger awaited them inside. Just as Klein finished his divination, a fireball hurtled toward the group from afar. It flew at an incredibly fast speed, striking straight at everyone. Dunn Smith, who had drawn his revolver before Klein began divination, immediately raised his hand and pulled the trigger with remarkable precision. Amidst the sound of gunfire, the fireball remained entirely unaffected, continuing its trajectory as if it were determined to force everyone to scatter to avoid it. Initially, Klein didn't pay much attention to the disruptor, as there were 6 Beyonders present, including rank 8 and rank 7 on the list. This meant that aside from Klein, everyone had considerable abilities. But as the fireball approached, Klein realized that the most dangerous enemy was not the tailing pursuers, the disruptor, or even Ray Bieber, whose condition in the warehouse remained unknown, but rather the sealed artifact 2-049. The reason was simple. Once everyone was forced to spread out or engage in enemy attacks, they wouldn't be able to awaken their companions in time, which meant each person would become a puppet in human form. Amid his chaotic thoughts, Klein was pulled by Leonard and rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the fireball. The orange fireball hit the ground without stirring even a speck of dust, as if nothing had happened. Klein was about to speculate that it was merely an illusion when he saw Harson lift the black iron chest and toss it aside, at least over a dozen meters away. Leonard and Borja split up after hearing Harson's order to take the chest at least 7 meters away from this spot and protect it from any intruders. Meanwhile, Dunn and Larada stood together with Harson, who had already drawn a thin silver sword. The three formed a crescent-shaped formation and charged toward the spot from which the fireball had been launched, all the while keeping an eye on the surrounding areas. Witnessing the scene unfold, Klein realized he had overlooked a crucial detail: 2-049 only affected a limited range. As long as they maintained a sufficient distance, they would be safe from danger. Klein then tucked the yellow quartz pendulum into his pocket with one hand, while with the other, he drew his revolver from the holster under his arm. Gripping the gun, he cautiously advanced, keeping alert for any sudden changes. While dealing with the fireballs, Klein was also concerned about Captain Dunn and Harson, as both were nightmares, beyond skilled in subtly influencing enemies. Klein wasn't sure how effective they would be in direct combat. Just as Klein had this thought, Harson suddenly slowed down, his expression turning somber and melancholic. He then recited a poem that made others feel as if they were peacefully strolling through the night. As the poem's words echoed, Klein almost lost his sense of tension and began to relax. Fortunately, Klein had previous experience from the time Dunn used a similar ability to lure him into a dream to verify details in the Welch case, and because he wasn't directly facing Harson, he quickly focused his mind, using cogitation to resist the influence of the poem. Klein let out a sigh of relief. He no longer doubted the direct combat capabilities of Dunn and Harson. The reason Klein initially had doubts about their abilities was that he had only recently been promoted and didn't fully understand the names of the potions. Klein had forgotten that Sequence 7 Nightmare was an upgrade from Sequence 8 Midnight Poet, which retained all the abilities of the previous sequence, but with significant improvements. Additionally, Klein's impression of the Midnight Poet came from Leonard Mitchell, which led him to understand that this ability inherited characteristics of the Sleepless, known for their proficiency in combat, shooting, climbing, and sensing. Moreover, the ability to use poems with distinct styles to exert different influences on surrounding beings was another key trait. In simple terms, Klein considered it to be a form of violent poet. Amidst Harson's poetic recitation, between the stacked crates, ripples suddenly spread out, and a man in a tailcoat and fedora appeared. However, his face was painted red, white, and yellow like a clown, creating a comical contrast to his formal attire, as if he were attending a party. Lorata, the Nighthawks member introduced as a sharpshooter by the captain, swiftly rushed forward. One hand held her gun, while the other was clenched into a fist. Within just a few steps, she was close to the clownish man in the tailcoat. She raised her fist and struck directly at the clown's face. Instantly, the clown shattered like a mirror into countless pieces and quickly disappeared without a trace. At the same time, a few steps away in a dark corner near the crates, the clown's silhouette reappeared, his figure swiftly being drawn again. The one who had been hit was merely an illusion. Then the clown bent backward suddenly, snapping his fingers to create the sound of a gunshot as if firing real bullets. Lorata, with sharp reflexes, rolled out of the way. But aside from the sound, nothing happened. Dunn and Harson raised their guns and steadily aimed at the opponent, firing one shot after another. Despite the full assault, the clown in the tailcoat dodged every attack with agility, unharmed. Suddenly, Lorata dashed forward like lightning. Although known as a sharpshooter, she fought by throwing punches at her enemy. The clown, unable to dodge in time, raised his left hand to block the punch. Seeing him pause, Dunn and Harson wasted no time, firing directly at him. At that very moment, the clown's arm blocking Lorata's fist suddenly ignited with an orange flame. In an instant, the fire engulfed the clown, spreading to Lorata. Dunn and Harson immediately fired at the flames, which quickly burned away, leaving only ashes floating in the air. But the clown's figure reappeared not far away, swiftly slipping behind the crates to hide. Then he raised his right hand and snapped his fingers once more. With the fictitious gunshot sound, Lorata abruptly halted her attack, as mud splattered near where she stood, leaving a bullet mark. This meant the clown's shot had been real this time. After unsettling his opponents with his mix of fake and real gunfire, the clown began snapping his fingers continuously, disappearing and reappearing while exchanging shots with Dunn and Harson. Watching this, Lorata squinted and raised her pale yellow long-barreled revolver. With a shot, the clown suddenly ducked, narrowly avoiding a fatal bullet. His fedora flew off, falling to the ground with a clear bullet hole in it. Yet the clown continued his fierce battle with the Nighthawks, undeterred. Seeing this, Harson stepped back a few paces and lowered his gun to begin reciting poetry again. The clown, who had been leaping between the wooden crates, suddenly raised his hand and poked his ear, laughing wide-mouthed as he looked at Harson. From a distance, Klein observed the scene, thinking the clown was trying to block the effects of the poem by covering his ears. Klein then concluded that the sequence potions of the Secret Order were truly bizarre. Just as Klein thought this, he saw a figure appear in one corner of the warehouse, moving toward the hidden spot where Bieber was. The figure was dressed in the grayish-white clothes of a dock worker, but his face was also painted red, yellow, and white like the clown. This meant the clown was merely distracting the Nighthawks while another person took advantage of the situation to retrieve the notebook. Upon realizing this, Klein instinctively raised his right hand and fired a shot at the figure on the warehouse roof. After the figure dodged the first shot, Klein didn't stop but continued pulling the trigger. The enemy's figure suddenly stopped, and blood spurted from his body. Leonard and Borja were also fired, but they missed. Klein was about to mock them for being worse shots than him, but quickly stopped himself from pulling the trigger. He remembered the result of his divination, that there was great danger inside the warehouse. It would be advantageous for Klein and the Nighthawks members to let the remaining Jester enter the warehouse first. If something happened, the enemy would bear the consequences. Amidst the gunfire, which Klein and the others pretended was aimed at misdirecting the enemy, the Jester smoothly made his way to the warehouse roof in the shadows. Suddenly, he dove down, smashing his elbow hard into the roof, which shattered. At that moment, Lorada's eyes darkened, and she made a strange gesture with her left hand. The Jester in the tailcoat, who had been leaping and tumbling around, froze in place as if an invisible hand had grabbed his ankle. Dunn also stopped shooting and opened his mouth, but instead of moving his vocal cords to produce sound, he used his spiritual power combined with the surrounding air to create a mystical, eerie hum. The Jester's struggles weakened immediately as if he had lost the will to live. Harson quickly raised his gun and aimed at the enemy. At that exact moment, a terrible, fear-filled scream erupted from deep within the warehouse. It was a scream of extreme terror as if something unimaginably horrifying had been encountered. Hearing it, Klein felt a chill run down his spine. Then the scream abruptly stopped, and the warehouse fell silent once more. Simultaneously, the sealed artifact 2049 inside the black iron chest became uncontrollably wild, as indicated by the violent pounding sounds from within. Seizing the moment when Harson, Dunn, and Lorada were distracted by the terrifying noise, the Jester in the tailcoat suddenly pulled a long piece of paper from his pocket. He waved his right hand, and the paper ignited, transforming into a black flaming whip, which he lashed at the invisible chains around his ankle. A painful cry echoed, and the Jester broke free, quickly dodging the Nighthawks' attacks.